When the armies of the Holy Emperor first encountered the Tyranid menace, there were thousands of different Tyranid bioforms assaulting the planets of mankind. As the Imperium learned more about the Great Devourer, it became clear that the versatility of the Tyranid hive mind was capable of creating so many specialized warriors that most would probably never be catalogued by humanity. Instead, the xenologist of the Adeptus Mechanicus created a broad classification for the bioforms based on the creature's battlefield roles. Although some of these categories are vague, they work well to inform the Imperial High Command and strategists in the field on how to best counter a particular Tyranid threat. Of all of the Tyranid classifications, the scariest and most likely to demoralize an Imperial Guard regiment are those that take to the skies and stalk the air, performing terribly deadly aerial assaults and harassing their prey with frightening speed. Known to Imperial Guardsmen as brooding mothers, the Tyranid bioform classified as Avius terribilis, or more commonly called a Herodan, is one of the Great Devourer's deadliest airborne warriors. Most Herodans appear like giant mutated armored snakes with massive leathery wings. Usually spotted circling high above the battlefield, these frightening creatures swoop down and are capable of devastating infantry line as well as heavy armored vehicles. This is because the Herodan not only has two massive claws capable of tearing into armor, but it also has two powerful biocannons. These organic projectile weapons are triggered by a massive electrochemical shock controlled by the Herodan that shoots out a massive payload of highly venomous and corrosive maggot-like organisms. When the organisms make contact with a target, they explode in a hail of bioacid that can melt through plasteel, ferrocrete, and just about any type of armor. If the target is another biological life form, the acid disintegrates the victim's entire body, reducing it to a smoldering pile of sludge. Although these biocannons are a terrifying weapon, the Herodan's two scything claws are not to be underestimated. Made of chitin and serrated bone, the Herodan uses its whipcord muscles to control these melee weapons with frightening accuracy. The massive flying creature can either target ground personnel, decapitating and mutilating guardsmen, or tearing into enemy aircraft, stabbing, slashing, and dismantling in a blink of an eye. The Herodan's weapons are not the only thing that makes this flying Tyranid bioform so dangerous in war. The maneuverability of the creature makes it unmatchable. While traditional aircraft can fly much faster than a Herodan, the creature's snake-like body allows it to twist and turn so quickly it can easily avoid enemy fighters or ground anti-aircraft artillery. Scarier still is how massive these creatures can get. While their exact size varies depending on the conflict, the Herodan can be up to 100 feet long and possess a wingspan of 130 feet. That's a creature that is 3 times as tall as a telephone pole that dominates the sky. Even if the planet's aerial defenses are competent enough to battle the Herodan, reports have come back to Imperial High Command that state that these creatures will not hesitate to sacrifice themselves in suicidal mid-air collisions. There have been many reports of perfectly timed kamikaze attacks that take out multiple aircraft in a squadron just from one Herodan. The other peculiar aspect of the Herodan is its lack of legs or feet. And many xenologists believe it's because once the creature is spat out from either a hive ship or a mycetic spore, it remains airborne for the rest of its lifespan. A few reports have surfaced that claim that a Herodan slithered on its belly like a snake, causing panic and devastation on the guardsman front line. However, it is unclear if this was intentional or if the Herodan's wings were damaged and survived the crash landing. Nevertheless, this massive bioform is terrifying to encounter, whether in the air or the ground. On the planet of Beta on Phaleon 4, Inquisitor Locke's forces encountered at least 2 Herodans when the creatures conducted a devastating surprise aerial attack against the Elysian drop troops' landing fields. The 2 creatures destroyed or damaged almost all of the Elysian aircraft in a deliberate attempt to cripple the drop troops' mobility. The anti-aircraft defenses for the landing ground proved insufficient to stop the Herodans. The reason the Herodan earned the nickname of the Broodmother is because most Herodan act as a carrier of a smaller Tyranid flyer bioform known as a Gargoyle. From far away, a Broodmother's belly seems like it's constantly moving. It isn't until the creature gets closer that the scaly limbs and leathery wings of dozens of Gargoyles become visible, and on the Broodmother's command, these deadly creatures detach themselves from the Herodan and either attack ground forces, obscure the sky around the Herodan, or perform suicide runs on enemy aircraft. In the later part of the 41st millennium, Death Watch forces fighting to cleanse Herisor of the Tyranid menace reported devastating initial losses due in large part to the attacks from Herodans and associated Gargoyles. while the smaller flyers distracted ground troops with swooping attacks and strafing runs. The Herodans crippled Imperial aircraft, thereby preventing effective air transport of ground troops. It is well known throughout the Orpheus salient that less than half of the Space Marines who fought on Herosor survived. Many of those who fell in these battles lost their lives to the Tyranid Herodans. The Herodan is truly the largest winged Tyranid bioform encountered by mankind, and while it shall always be a terrifying sight on the battlefield, another one of the hive mind's most dangerous flying bioforms is possibly one of its smallest. The creature known as a sky slasher is one of the most common Tyranid organisms, and the danger it represents to a planet is always overshadowed by the larger and scarier looking Tyranid bioforms. Most often found in massive swarms, the sky slashers are small, maggot-like bioforms that are about half a meter long, with a thin armor casing that covers its head and torso, while 6 sharp talon-like arms shoot out from its side. On its back are 2 bat-like wings that the creature uses to maneuver through the battlefield. Like a swarm of locusts, the sky slashers serve the purpose of devouring as much biomass as possible and then transporting their bloated bodies back to the reclamation pools at the base of the capillary towers, so that the biomass can be consumed by the hive fleet up above. Nothing is safe from the sky slasher's appetite. Like its ground-dwelling counterpart, the Ripper, the sky slasher's powerful jaws can bite through flesh and bone with alarming ease, and they have been known to gnaw their way through plasteel in order to reach more food. What makes these creatures so deadly is their fearlessness. In swarms, they are capable of taking down creatures many times their size, like Crutox, Ogrins, and even Squigots. Once a sky slasher is latched onto its prey, its head splits open, and it digs its wide mouth filled with rows of small hook-like teeth, and begin to chew away at the enemy. Because of their maneuverability and their lack of fear, the sky slashers almost always find their way behind enemy lines, and are usually the first Tyranid bioforms to assault refugee bunkers, medical camps, or fleeing Imperial citizen caravans. And because of their size, the creatures are extremely difficult to destroy, as most weaponry is designed for larger targets. At first glance, it is easy to think that an armored space marine would be safe from any attack of an individual sky slasher, but in mass, they can immobilize and drag down even the strongest battle brother. The fact that they are so underestimated, and yet so abundant in Tyranid invasions, make these flying bioforms one of the deadliest. A rank above the Sky Slasher is the Tyranid bioform referred to as a hellbat by Imperial Guardsmen. Xenobiologists know this creature as a Gontai avius, or gargoyle. These are the vicious flying creatures that accompany the Herodans into battle. Resembling the traditional termagant, they are much smaller than a human, at only 4 feet long, and are lightly armored, but their wide, leathery wings and the fact that these bioforms also attack in swarms make them extremely terrifying. The enemy will more than likely hear the gargoyles before they spot them. They are designed to terrorize the enemy with a horrendous high-pitched scream that is meant to drive the foe out of cover and into open areas where the gargoyles will rain down bioplasma from their mouths. Unlike the traditional Tyranid bioforms, gargoyles are actually very skittish and prefer to engage the enemy in a ranged firefight as opposed to close-quarter combat. This may be due to the fact that the bat-like wings of the gargoyles are easily damaged in melee combat. While the hive mind created them for range assaults, gargoyles are not helpless in melee. They are capable of spitting a toxic fluid, which they instinctively aim at the eyes of their opponent in order to blind them. They then tear into the foe with their barbed tails and talons until either they or their prey are slain. A quirk in the gargoyles' behavior drives them to seek out ventilation shafts and other small entrances to any structure that the swarm is assaulting. Despite their long wings, they have little trouble crawling into these spaces and entering a fortress, where they wildly lash out with their claws and barbed tails as they attempt to escape. Many Imperial Guardsmen have found out just how dangerous a gargoyle can be in an enclosed space, as they fight with all the desperate savagery of a cornered beast, entering a frenzied state that more than compensates for any perceived weaknesses. Another flying bioform that has struck fear into the ranks of the Imperium, although it is extremely rare to spot on the battlefield, is a creature known as a Parasite of Mortrex. Twice the height of a gargoyle, this creature has become synonymous with terror, as it is described as a bat-winged monster with multiple clawed appendages and a multi-fanged maw. But what makes this creature so terrifying is its long, barbed tail, tipped with a hollow tube that it uses to implant its victims with a Ripper parasite embryo. The Parasite of Mortrex doesn't kill its prey. Instead, it allows the victim to run away after it's been inseminated, and within a couple of hours, the Ripper parasite bursts out of the unlucky survivor's body. This terrifying bioform was first encountered on the Imperial fortress world of Mortrex. This well-defended planet was assaulted by High Fleet Kraken. However, the hordes of Tyranids could not crack the world's impressive fortifications. During the 10th day of the invasion, the Astra Militarum forces defending Mortrex encountered a winged bioform they had never seen before. Without warning, the monster dove towards the human entrenchments, stabbing the Imperial guardsmen with lightning-quick strikes of its tail. The creature's victims were thus injected with Ripper parasites, many of which grew to maturity within a few heartbeats, devouring their host from inside out. Amidst the agonizing death screams, a swarm of Rippers ruptured from the cracked bones and torn flesh as they emerged in a spray of blood. The few survivors told of this new Tyranid threat, a horrifying creature that implants organisms into the still-living prey. They called this creature the Parasite, and all knew that to face it was to risk the most horrific death imaginable. 2 weeks later, the planet of Mortrex was overrun by the vast, ravenous tides of Ripper swarms. All that remained was a single astropathic transmission that warned of the Parasite. Fortunately for the Imperium of Man, it has not been sighted since that Battle of Mortrex. However, the myth of the Parasite has haunted Imperial Guard regiments since then. Larger than the Parasite, but smaller than a Herodan, is the Tyranid bioform known as a Harpy. This creature resembles a bloated and armored snake with massive leathery wings. It seems to have been created by the hive mind to perform hit-and-run attacks, rather than sustained assaults. Large cysts on the underside of the Harpy's abdomen produce clusters of spore mines, which the Harpy drops on its foes with deadly effect. The Harpy's arms boast a number of bioweapons, such as scything talons, and often a stranglethorn cannon or heavy venom cannon. In addition to this formidable arsenal, the Harpy can also stun, or in some cases, injure its opponent with a highly pitched screech that gives the creature its name. It is excruciatingly painful to lesser lifeforms, such as orcs and humans, and can even prove fatal to creatures with more highly developed senses, such as the Eldari or the genetically enhanced Space Marines. Those that survive this cacophonous assault are left dizzying and disoriented, easy prey for the Harpy's razor-sharp talons. The Harpy will always go after prey that is ill-suited to fight back. Light enemy vehicles are a particular favorite, as they lack the speed to escape and the capability to offer any real threat to the Harpy at short range. Although the size of the Tyranid Harpy is extremely impressive, it needs to have a hollowed body in order to fly, and thus unable to survive injuries that might not even face other Tyranid creatures of similar size. Imperial xenobiologists believe that a variant of the Tyranid Harpy is a hive crone. This is a creature perfectly adapted to aerial combat, able to wrestle enemy aircraft out of the sky. The hive crone is so perfect for dogfights because of the living missiles known as tentaclides, which attach themselves to its wings. When the hive crone releases these missiles, they seek out and destroy enemy aircraft by exploding in a bioelectrical pulse blast. Hive crones are bred with the same basic components as a harpy, but are nonetheless markedly different due to their set of dorsal chimneys, which emit a cloud of toxic gas. Before reaching a target planet, hive crones also protect Tyranid bioships in their journey through interstellar space. And those are the most impressive and deadly flying Tyranid bioforms. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwan with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.
Oh, I used to put my